and I teach 9th grade history and Bible. This is my 17th year at Caldwell. Like Mr. Greer said, we date back to the last century. Started in 1999, I came with 4 of my 5 children, 1 in grammar, 1 in middle school, and 2 in high school. And my youngest graduated in 2010, and I'm very excited about the class of 2020 that will be our rising freshman, because my oldest grandson is a part of that class, so that's kind of fun.
Mrs. Leland's daughter was the very first graduate of Caldwell Academy. We graduated 1 student that year. That was Katie Leland, who actually taught here, now has children here. So the Lelands have been a huge part of the school.
I'm Haven Voorhees, and I'm a junior here at Caldwell, and I've been here since 3rd grade, and I'm involved in the student council, some small groups, and the soccer team.
Sorry.
Okay.
You're good.
I'm Lauren Serkey. I'm a sophomore here at Caldwell. I've been here for 3 years. I came in 8th grade after I moved here to North Carolina. I'm involved in the tennis team and the local ministry club.
I'm Cliff Logan. I'm also a sophomore here at Caldwell. This is my 2nd year, and I'm part of the baseball team, and I'm a student ambassador.
I'm Brad Welch, and I'm a senior here. This is my 7th year at Caldwell. I'm here in 6th grade, and I play on the baseball team, but at Caldwell seniors as well.
I'm just going to kind of open it up. They can definitely talk a great deal about things at Caldwell, but if you want to begin to throw out questions, it can be broad or specific. We'll begin with that.
So I'd love to hear what you would say to a student that's thinking of coming here for the first year of 9th grade, who's also considering maybe a bigger school. You know, this class size here is 50, 55 versus 100, 200. I'm interested to hear, is it small to you? How does that feel for you guys?
So, in my grade, we have 23 girls, and it's been really cool for me because over the past few years, we've grown really close with each other. And an example of that, well, to start off, the community aspect is what I think really distinguishes Caldwell, and I love that about it. And this morning, the girls in my grade, and also we invited the sophomores, we met at Chick-fil-A, and we do it every Friday morning, and we talked about the retreat and just what we're learning and what God's teaching us, the highs and lows of our week, and that's just like one of my favorite times, and I just really enjoy it, and I think that aspect of Caldwell is really awesome because you don't have those friendships, and you don't have the opportunity to get to know people who aren't necessarily like you and to connect with them when you have bigger classes. So I love that.
Well, like Haven said, probably my favorite thing about Caldwell is the community. When I first moved here, we were deciding between Caldwell and Wesleyan, which is like this school has like 200 kids in each grade. And the thing that made me choose Caldwell was the community. I remember when I toured Wesleyan, the lady that gave us a tour, she was like really nice, but she didn't really know any of the students. And then when I toured Caldwell, I remember the lady that gave us a tour since Tyson, she knew every single student that she passed in the hallway. She'd be like, hey, how's your mom doing? How's your day going? And I think that's like my favorite thing. You're not just a face in the crowd here. Everyone knows you. I know every single person in my grade. I feel really close to all of them.
Cliff, you were in a bigger school, so you can kind of speak to that transition.
Yes, I came to Caldwell. I spent 7 years in the public school system in Danville, Virginia, and I came to Caldwell. I drove 2 hours each day just to come to Caldwell, and I think I came because in my graduating class I would have had 450 students, and now I have 52 or so. And so it's just a nice way to, I know everybody in my class. I'm closer with everybody than I would have been back home. And I just fit in a lot better here than I would have there. And being in these smaller classes, it's already helped me figure out, I don't want to go to a UNC where there's tons and tons of people. I want to go to a Elon or a Davidson where it's more close community. You know your teachers, you know everything that's going on. So, I mean, Caldwell, in my opinion, is better than just being at a bigger school just because there's more people.
I think one of the biggest things about having the small environment here at Caldwell is, one, in the classroom, you just know your teachers very well. Like, one of the things, like, I am not looking forward to leaving all my teachers, because you grow really close relationships with all your teachers over 4 years in high school. And also just the opportunity to get to know your class really well. Like, the rhetoric retreat, that's not something you're going to get anywhere else. Like, nowhere else can you take the entire high school out and just have a day and a half together and just grow together as a class in the community. And also just the classes in general. Like, there are 15 guys in my grade. And so whenever we have a day when we don't have school the next day or something, and we have like a Friday off maybe, a lot of times we'll get all 15 guys together and just hang out and go do something. And I think that's just a really awesome opportunity to get to know like everyone in your grade really well, and not just like kind of know everyone on the surface. I think you kind of get to get deeper relationships with everyone that you know. So, yeah.
I just like to address this as a parent of graduates. I think that, of course, the school was a lot smaller when my kids were in high school, especially my older ones. But this doesn't, what they're talking about doesn't end when they graduate. And I think that's one of the things that's phenomenal, is that my kids are still very, very close to their high school friends. And I'm not in touch with my high school friends at all. Of course, I move around the country a lot, but even those of my kids who, I have some in China, they still are very close to their high school friends from Caldwell, and I think that I can see now that that will be a lifetime thing. So as a parent, that's just really neat to watch.
Jump in. Speak a little bit. One of the things I know that parents hear a lot is there's just it isn't too much work. Is Caldwell getting too much homework? Is it too much? And so all three of you guys, all four of you have done quite a bit at our school, and you're good students. Mrs. Liebman also is our humanities department chair, and has really kind of helped birth and pioneer the humanities department. So she can speak as a teacher for many, many years, also as a mom and a grandmother of all kids. So could you all speak just a little bit to the academic side, the workload, how you feel, Brad, kind of prepared or maybe not prepared as you look at some, like Wheaton and some other schools? And you don't all have to speak, but if a couple of you might speak to that.
Alright, well, I'm not going to lie, it is a lot of work, and it's just something that you're going to have to get used to in high school. And I mean, it's not anything that's going to change. Like, I think it prepares you very well, because in college you're going to have a ton of work. And I think one of the biggest things though is like the teachers, they're so invested in what we're doing. It's a lot of work, but they're always there to help you. Like, if you don't understand something, the teachers' doors are always open to go and talk to them, get help with math, get help with science, really anything. So it's a ton of work, but there's always teachers and there's always like resources to really help you get that work done and get a better understanding of it. And I think going off into college next year, I feel very prepared. And I think one of the biggest things is we do a ton of public speaking here. And I know a lot of kids hate that when they're coming into high school, is because they're really afraid of that. But I think that one of those things is it really prepares us for like interviews. I've had tons of interviews already for college, and like I'm not really nervous about them. I feel fine communicating with people, and I think that's one of the biggest things that Caldwell teaches, is that it teaches us how to speak to people and how to communicate our ideas well. And that's one of the biggest things I talked to in an open house we had, and I think one of the biggest things about classical education is it teaches students how to think rather than what to think. And I think that's one of the like problems with the public education system now, is it's kind of turned into like an assembly line almost. And whereas Caldwell here in classical education, instead of teaching students what to think, we're teaching students how to think and how to form their own opinions and ideas on things. So even though it's a lot of work, I think you get a much better education, a more solid foundation for the future.
Brad, what's your thesis topic this year?
I'm doing my thesis on the ethics of embryonic stem cell research.
We will put this out in Eagles Call. All 45 seniors will give their thesis defense the first full week in May. We actually canceled their classes for the week, and that week, kids present their thesis. How many of you actually have heard of thesis? A number of you have. That's a great opportunity. We will invite you as parents to come be a part of that. We'll actually invite you to come be a judge. That's kind of cool to see that finished product. And so, yeah, we'll hear more about that.
Yeah, I'll go along with Brad and say it definitely is harder, but it's worth it. If I were back home, I would have higher grades than I do here, but to me it's not really worth that because you're more given the grades. It's more like you do the work, you get the grade. And it's the same thing here, but here you actually have to put in the work, you have to put in the time to study and do your homework, pay attention in class. You can't just goof off and everything. You have to constantly be knowing what's going on and how to study for these things. So I think the workload is harder, but it's better for you because further in life you get, it's not going to get easier. It's definitely just going to get harder. So you just have to know, hey, it's going to be hard, but if I do the right things, if I study the right ways, I'll make it through and I'll have good grades and everything else that I do.
So when Brad was talking about Caldwell teaches you how to think, not what to think, I started thinking about my favorite class this year, which is Bible and Ethics. And we do something called EQDs, and it's Ethical Question of the Day. And so basically someone gets up and presents a topic, and then y'all just go back and forth and debate the ethics of it for the class. And that's been really awesome because sophomore year, you take a debate class and learn how to identify rhetorical fallacies and all different stuff, and then you get to apply it. And so I've loved that because you can convey your ideas, and a lot of times it gets a little heated with differences of opinions, but it's still really great because you get to see all the perspectives laid before you and identify what you believe.
Ms. Lehman, would you maybe talk a little bit, this really comes back to you. Mrs. Lehman teaches 9th grade medieval history, which is her passion and love. But she also teaches our freshmen kind of a worldview in apologetics. And then she also gets to teach the seniors, so they get that when they first come into 9th grade as freshmen, but then they kind of hit it as a bookend senior year. And so maybe speak just a little bit to what you do with the freshmen, maybe some of the books you read, and then how you hit that again senior year where Brad is now.
Over the years, talking to kids that have come back from college and all of that, we've just really been impressed with the fact that high school is the time when young people need to make their faith their own. And so we've done lots of different things, but we've kind of settled on, we start in with their history class freshman year is apologetics. And so we read Mere Christianity by C.S. Lewis, and we discuss that. And then we also read Blue Like Jazz, which is a much more postmodern view of the same sort of thing that Lewis is talking about. And we compare those to one another, and we look at the topics and see that they're actually saying the same thing, they're just saying them in a very different way. So that gives us a chance to introduce the whole idea of worldview and the difference that worldview can make, and how, as biblical Christians, our worldview is really neither modern nor postmodern, but biblical, and so we talk about that. And then second semester, we read The Reason for God by Tim Keller, which is much more technically an apologetic work, and we work through that, and it's really a good defense of the faith, and it addresses a lot of those questions that, if they're out working in the community or certainly in college, they will run into people who have these questions about the faith. And then senior year in worldview, sophomore year they have theology with their history, and then they have the ethics class junior year. And then senior year we go back to worldview. And in worldview, We read Moore Lewis, we read Screw Tape Letters and The Great Divorce and The Abolition of Man, which is a kind of difficult one. And then we talk a lot about postmodernism, and my favorite thing that we do, we're about to start, and that is before they leave the second semester of their senior year, they write what we call a personal manifesto. And they go through 16 different questions. 8 of them are philosophical questions. Who is God? How did the world get here? What is the purpose of man? What happens after you die? And those 8 questions, they turn in one a week, a paragraph, for what they believe. And I think it's just really important for the seniors. They have to, in one paragraph, tell me what they believe and why they believe it, and they need to back it up. All of our students are not necessarily Christians. We have students from China, and so they're allowed to use quotes, but they have to think through what they believe, and they have to explain to me, to my satisfaction, why they believe it. And then they also write a second part, which I do not read. I make sure they have done it, but I don't read it unless they ask me to. And those are personal questions that we think are very important that students ask themselves before they go to college. Things like, what am I going to do about Christian fellowship in college? How am I going to make friends? What about money? And then things like, what about alcohol? What about sexual relationships? And so they answer those on their own, but they think them through ahead of time, so that they have it down in black and white before they get out there in college. And so I think that's my favorite thing that we do. But we also talk about worldview. We do a little bit of a comparative religion study as well, so that when they meet people of different faiths, they will understand where they're coming from.
Anybody else? Something quiet. To Caldwell kids, this is for the students. Sometimes I think maybe we can have kind of the idea that, you know, Caldwell is definitely a bubble and you don't really experience maybe the real world or temptations like you might in a public school setting. Do Caldwell kids wrestle with all the same temptations as everybody else? You know what I'm saying? Do you feel like you really can live this sheltered high school life, or do you feel like, you know, we have struggles and my friends have struggles like everybody else, and we deal with all that stuff as well? You know what I'm getting at?
Alright, so I definitely think that Caldwell kids do definitely deal with all the temptations that anyone else deals with, and especially a lot of my friends even, we all have friends that are outside of the private school system, they're in public schools, and so we see those temptations like that they're having, and like we have a lot of the same ones. I think that just coming from Caldwell and the beliefs that we have behind us and kind of the people that we have around us to support us, I don't think it's necessarily that we don't deal with the temptations. I think it's that we have people around us to help us deal with those temptations better. Because I know I'm very close with most of the guys in my grade, and like when we're struggling with things, we all like will go to each other and we'll talk about it and like work through those things together. It's not like we're trying to just deal with all these temptations on our own and ultimately failing. A lot of times we have people around us that will help us, and they're like glad to help us with anything that we're struggling with. So I don't think it's that we don't deal with them. I think it's that we have the support group around us to help us deal with them better, all of us.
Well, most weekends I do go back home to Virginia, and I still have some friends back there. And they're good people. They just don't make the best decisions with what they do. So we definitely do face the same temptations. I think it's just we have a firmer grasp of, hey, I shouldn't do this. This isn't the right thing to do. And I think even if I did do it, I'd feel very guilty about it, and so that stopped me from ever doing it again. And they kind of not embed that in us, but they teach us there's laws, there's restrictions on things for a reason. And so once we see that for ourselves, we're like, oh, they actually know what they're talking about. So I think we definitely do face the same temptations. but thanks to the kind of foundation that Caldwell has laid down for us, we know the difference of right and wrong.
Yeah, I don't really think you can escape temptation anywhere. I think it's just something all people go through, but reading the books like Mere Christianity and having like a good group of Christian friends around you really just helps you. Like, I have a group of friends that I can talk about really anything with, and if I'm ever struggling with something, I just go to them and I find out, you know, some of them are struggling with the same things, and so we just talk about it and we get through it together, and that's probably like one of my favorite things about this school. It's just a good group of friends I have to keep me grounded in my faith.
Just quickly, I don't think that Caldwell is like my entire life. Like, I love Caldwell, but I have stuff outside of Caldwell too. Like with my church, I'm involved in a small group, which those are some of my best friends, and we have, I think, like 8 different schools between like 12 girls, and so I'm able to see the public school perspective, but from a Christian view, and then also I'm on a travel soccer team. And there's only one other girl that's a Christian on it, and there's like 20 girls, and so that's a place where I've been able to see just like the darkness when you're not following the Lord, and that's really impacted me, and just that you still have to love them, and so I don't think we're sheltered at all, or just in this bubble, and you're gonna go to college and go crazy, but so yeah, that's my opinion.
Thank you, thank you. And I cannot, I love what you all just said. I desperately want all the kids to have lives outside of our school. We're a school. We're a school. We're not everything by any means. And so those relationships are very, very important. I don't want to, if anybody has any questions, please shout it out or hand.
Sure. First question for Brad. You actually grew up through the classical model, the trivium. Tell us a little bit about how you felt the classical model in particular sort of came together in this last section.
All right. Well, I was not here in grammar school, and that's kind of the learning to memorize facts and that kind of stage. But I came from another small private Christian school, and they had a very similar view of like the grammar schools and memorizing facts. I felt like I had a very strong foundation coming into middle school for that. And then middle school you have logic class, so you're kind of learning kind of how to think and everything. And then in high school we have is kind of the rhetoric stage where you're learning how to support your views and how to support whatever you think. And so junior year we have junior thesis, senior year we have the senior thesis. And I think as I'm preparing for senior thesis, it's really, it's kind of, the capstone of our education here at Caldwell. It is everything we've learned combined into one final assessment. And so I think that logic in the kind of the logic stage in dialectic school and the rhetoric stage in rhetoric school have really helped me as I kind of learned to think for myself and really to support my views well, because in order to write a 15-page thesis on a very debatable topic, it's almost impossible to do that unless you really have a strong foundation of how to support what you believe. And so I think that's kind of how it all ties together, and really is, I think, what was your question again? Sorry.
Sort of how that classical piece kind of brought it together.
Okay.
It's hard because it's not so much boxes that you can check,
Right.
but again, you're looking at a kid that's at the very end of his education here, so.
Yeah. So it kind of, it's like in the first stage where we're doing research and everything. So that's kind of where we're learning all these facts like we do in grammar school, and then as we're getting our argument together, it's kind of the logic and rhetoric stage all compiled into one, because you can't, those are kind of like the same stage ultimately once you finish, because you're kind of thinking and also supporting what you believe at the same time. So I think that's kind of how it all ties together, and I feel like going off next year, I'm very prepared to like support my views and support what I believe, thanks to the, like I said earlier, learning how to think rather than what to think, because, and like I said, I think that's one of the biggest flaws of public education, is that they just don't really learn how to think. They just kind of are fed information and just regurgitate it on a test. Whereas here, like, essentially all of our tests are just a bunch of essays, which a lot of people are scared of coming into high school, but it's probably, I love it now as a senior, and like both of my midterm exams for history and lit, it was just a bunch of essays we had to write, and that doesn't even bother me now because I've learned how to think, and there's not necessarily one answer for each essay. You could give multiple answers, but it's just that you defend it well and that you can like think through it logically is how you like get the A on it or whatever. But so that's like I actually love like writing the essays now because I can think through things. I've learned to think through things and support what I'm wanting to say, and so I think that's how it kind of all ties together. The entire education system ties together.
Yeah, I think that just a little bit because I want to brag on our seniors, well actually our whole rhetoric school, but one of the things that's very fun about being in rhetoric school is a lot of times teachers will have to not be there for one reason or another, will have to pop in the classroom. And one of the ways I notice the most in the rhetoric school, the classical model and how it progresses, is that if I have to step in a classroom and I have no idea what's going on, suppose I step in this Legions classroom today for something, no idea what's going on, all I have to do is look around the classroom and say, who do you want to teach today? And they can point at another student, and that student can pop up and teach the class. They are engaged and they're very well spoken, so the written part of it is one thing, but I also believe that about 99% of the kids that graduate from Caldwell not only know what they know, they also know what they don't know, and they're able to articulate both very, very well, which will really come in handy as they leave and go out in college, not having a fear of public speaking or able to put their thoughts into words. They train them over and over and over again. They're always talking in class, they're always up in front of class. And it's really, I think, a very helpful part of the education because it speaks so well. As obvious to date as an undertone.
I know we're getting lower on time. I talk to a number of, I talk to high school kids a lot because I love that stage. More and more, I often hear from kids at other schools, Mr. Greer, we never read the book cover to cover in high school. We're losing that a little bit. At Caldwell, you read a lot of books. And I'm a math guy, so I have to push harder to read, but I've grown to love reading. Without taking too much time, maybe share a book at some point in your high school career that really impacted you in any grade. And everyone doesn't have to speak, but a couple of you can.
Okay, so this year we read Hamlet, and I've never really liked reading plays before, ever. I don't know. But I really enjoyed it, and it's probably my favorite, piece of literature that we've read. I just think it's really, it's like really deep, and you can relate to it still today, even though it was written so long ago.
I'd have to say my favorite came this year. We read The Scarlet Letter by Nathaniel Hawthorne, and going into it, our teacher told us this probably will be your least favorite book this year, but it will probably teach you the most. And I'd have to agree with that because there's a lot going on in that book. You have to figure out really who did what, and in your own opinion, you have to figure out who did the worst thing. And it's nice because not everybody has the same view on everything. Somebody might think that Hester did something worse than Dimmesdale, and vice versa. So it's nice to see what everybody thinks, but at the same time be able to share your own opinion about the literature you're reading.
My favorite book I read last year, and it's Tale of Two Cities by Charles Dickens, and I absolutely love that book because first of all, my favorite time period is the French Revolution, and it took place in kind of like the events. It was almost like historical fiction because you could follow it. And so another thing at Caldwell is they relate the history to the literature, and so the teachers work together. And I've loved that aspect of it because you learn the actual facts and what's going on, but then you also have the book going along with it and the writing movement of the time and the events.
I just want to make a comment, and this is really directed at Mrs. Liebman. My daughter, who's graduated from Caldwell, is not a reader. She hated reading.
but Blue Like Jazz was one of her favorite books. And I said, well, let me borrow it. Okay, but I want it back. Okay. She brought it to college, and even if she doesn't read it again, she will still keep. She brought a bunch of high school books back to college just to have that reminder of what she has learned through you. So thank you very much.
One of the things that I think is so cool that we started doing several years ago is the kids, all the books that they get are theirs. And so, you know, some of them love having this library, you know, and by the time they get, you know, halfway through sophomore year or into junior year, they have a whole shelf full of books. And it's a big sense of accomplishment to have this set of books in your room that, you know, your friends come in there and see, wow, you know, what you have read, and a lot of them do take them to college. I always tell them that when I go to Ed McKay and I see the books that we read on the shelf, that I go and look and see if anybody's just to kind of intimidate them and to keep them a little bit, because I do really think they will go back. I know my son, I don't know how many people he's lent his copy of Blue Like Jazz to, so it's cool.
Jump in, please.
Could you guys speak to a student that might be coming into ninth grade who is not having a any of the logic and Latin, that adjustment of, you know, how to transition better into ninth grade?
So I came in 8th grade, and prior to that I never had any Latin or any logic or really any of the classical model. I didn't even know what the classical model was until maybe like my first day at Caldwell. And I really didn't find it that difficult to transition into. The teachers were there to definitely help me. My logic teacher, I had logic for 1 year, and so I was completely lost for the first half of that class. I had no idea what was going on, but she was there. She just held me through it, and I appreciate it a lot more now. Yeah, so I don't think a student coming in would have too much trouble with it.
Yeah.
So you came in, did you?
Yes, when I came in, I think 9th grade is the best time to come in because everybody's getting a fresh start. Everybody's leaving 8th grade, coming into 9th grade. So I never witnessed or experienced any of the grammar or dialectic stage, but I think, yes, it does have an impact on what you do in the rhetoric school, but at the same time in the rhetoric school, you're getting your public speaking and your debating and the rhetoric phase of it all. So at that time, you kind of put it all together and you figure out, hey, this is what I need to know, and you put it all together, and it's just like a beautiful thing to see come together because you're like, wow, I just spoke for 5 minutes on this topic. And so it's like, and it also it's great because when you have to give oral exams, the rhetoric part of it is to kind of have no fears when you talk, be confident in what you're talking about. So it also gets you ready for the oral aspect of exams, which is a great thing.
A couple of years ago, we made some changes that I think really helped kids transition into the high school. We moved Bible from a separate class into history, like I said before. And then we created a writing class. And so all freshmen and sophomores have a semester of writing and then a semester of rhetoric, public speaking. And I think that helps a lot because even if they haven't been here, then we kind of, you know, educate them during that class in the way that we write. And I have several new freshmen this year that are just doing very, very well. The other thing is we used to do debate freshman year, but we found that was very, very difficult for kids who are coming in new. So debate is sophomore year. And they just have a regular public speaking class which teaches them a lot of the basics. In rhetoric, they learn a lot of the classical ways of argument and things like that they might have gotten a little bit in logic and critical thinking. And so I think those two classes really help the transition.
one last question. Hayden, you mentioned Tale of Two Cities and the historical context of it. And you also mentioned that you love to see sort of take the lessons from that and apply them here, because obviously there are a lot of things from Tale of Two Cities that we see in today's society as well. Can you talk a little bit about how you and the other students that you communicate with outside of school sort of apply those lessons, and how you talk about what you're studying today and how it applies to today's life?
Okay, so...
Sorry, wrong question.
No, you're good. So Tale of Two Cities, I love that aspect of society versus and just Manette was in jail for so long, and just how that's distorted, and then what was right. And so I think that applies to our society, just deciphering where the truth actually is. And in a lot of aspects today, the truth is completely distorted. And so I kind of just analyze my own life. Am I just following along with the world, or am I actually seeing what is just? And that was the main thing that I took out of that book.
I know the kids will need to get to class. But before you go, if you would, we talked a lot about academics, and that's an important slice. But they actually have a ton of fun. They actually goof around a lot. And so before you go, maybe if you would just share maybe kind of one of your kind of greatest fun memories, or or something, or maybe whether it was a trip to Italy, or whether it was sludge wars, or whether it was something really stupid or silly, or Valentine's Day is coming up, just something maybe that I don't always think about that really has meant a lot to you.
So this isn't just one event, but it's one thing. I'm on the soccer team, and those girls are literally closer than my family. I just absolutely adore them, and it's really neat because the coaches are really influential. They do devotions before games and just share with us what they're struggling with, and so we can see someone who's a Christian but farther down the line for us, so they're an example. And then in addition, and I think this is probably good for all the sports teams, but the older girls really take it upon themselves to mentor the younger girls. And I had a few girls reach out to me and just take me out to dinner, or ask me to watch a movie with them, or just little stuff like that. And they were just serving me and loving me, but then it turned into really deep relationships, and they're some of my best friends now. And then it's been really cool this year because I've gotten to be friends with some of the sophomores from last year, and then also some of the freshmen. I'm taking one girl out to lunch on Saturday, and I adore her, but I just don't know her that well. And that's just really cool for me to see the impact that they've had on my life, and that now I'm getting to impact others. And it's just through a sports team, and I wouldn't have had them besides that. That's kind of long, but...
I guess one of my favorite memories, is the retreat. I love the retreat with this year and last year. I think it's a great opportunity not to just grow closer to the friends you already have, but to make new friends, or maybe not even make new friends, but just become closer with people that you just don't know very well. And that's definitely something that's one of my favorite things, because I see these people in hallways every day, but I might not have talked to them before, or I don't know anything about them, and so it's just a great time, through all the free time we have, just to get to know people that I really never talked to before.
Well, I'd say this is a general thing, but Caldwell dances are usually a pretty fun time. I remember last year for the freshman and sophomore dance, it was just really nice to, for one night, just kind of chill, relax, be with your friends, but at the same time, be able to dress up, have a good time, and be together at the same time. And then this was the second year we did the Christmas night out. We went to the Carolina Theater and just danced and goofed around, had a really good time. So dances are usually, in my opinion, a pretty good thing.
Well, I'm going to talk about Italy, but I'm going to also talk about something that Hayden said for a second. When I came in freshman year, I played on the baseball team my 8th grade year as well. And then freshman year, I don't know how many of you know Clay Young, but he's an awesome guy. he was a junior my freshman year, and so when I was an underclassman, he kind of like took me under his wing, and he was just a great example for me as I was kind of growing. I was like Mr. Greer was saying earlier, I was kind of in that time where I was kind of struggling with my faith, trying to figure it out on my own for the first time, and he was just a great example of like a godly man and like leader, like how to be a good leader for me. And so that's kind of encouraged me to do the same thing with freshmen and sophomores. Like now that I'm an upperclassman, and kind of like give them that same example, that same encouragement that he gave me. But anyways, Italy, everyone knows about it. Everyone's looking forward to it from like time they're in grammar school. Basically, it seems like. I remember being in middle school watching the seniors leave on the bus and just being like, I can't wait for that. And it's a surreal experience. You go with your entire class pretty much, and 5 chaperones I think we had, and we just get to explore Italy together. I remember like the guys, it was my birthday when we were in Lucca, which was really cool, and so we were in Lucca and we had time to go out for lunch, and we didn't know where we wanted to go, so we just started walking, and we just kind of wound our way through Lucca, and then just sat down on lunch. It's like just some random place we found. We thought it was a pretty good place because we only saw Italian families there, so we decided to go there. But I think it's just a really cool time to get together as a class and kind of escape from everything for a little bit and just get to have this opportunity to bond. And it's kind of weird, like how being in a foreign country will kind of do that to you. But yeah, it's just an amazing experience, an amazing time, and it's just a great time to just grow as a class and grow as a community. And I think before senior year, I was actually kind of worried because our class really wasn't that close going in junior year and everything. And I think you kind of see that in a lot of classes, but then at the beginning of senior, it's like something changes when you're a senior, and going to Italy, it was just like, it all finally came together, and our class just has been so tight-knit ever since. Like, we're like inseparable almost. So I think that was just an amazing trip. So, yeah.
Thank you guys. I'm going to let them slip out and I was going to close. Is that okay? Thank y'all very, very much. I really do appreciate you guys being here. It's fun to hear from the kids. So I'm going to kind of wrap up unless you have any last minute questions for me. A couple things I'll say. One, sometimes I think we can have the idea that Caldwell really is just a lot of very high achieving, bright kids, and that very average students are not going to be able to make it here. That actually is not true. It is not true. We just got back PSAT scores for 9th, 10th, 11th graders, and we have kids. We had 2 kids that broke 1400 on their math, verbal, and PSAT. That's very high. We had students in the 700s math, verbal, SAT, and so we tend to have students. We have very average students that I think are receiving an outstanding education. They're working hard. We have more high aptitude students. So we have students really kind of at every level. Caldwell is a smaller school, so we can't serve everyone, obviously. But I just wanted to mention that. I think since we have this idea that, wow, it's these really, really bright kids, and average kids cannot study here. That's very far from the truth. I think attitude and effort is a whole lot of it. You mentioned a new student coming in. Most of the time, if I have a student that academically it's just not a good fit, most of the time it's attitude and effort. Most of the time. Occasionally, we'll have a student that really is working hard and just needs a school with more options. That happens sometimes. Not that often, but it does sometimes, and that's okay. The Lord, God has created our children perfectly. And if it's not Caldwell, we always got something different for them, obviously. So I wanted to mention that. You, as parents, are always welcome to come visit classrooms. That is a great way to see our high school. Come watch a class change, watch the kids, pop in lunch. The kids' demeanor, how they interact with each other will tell you a great deal. You can visit a school in 2 hours, and you will feel the culture very quickly of that school. I'm not even sure that you can tour and send classes in public schools anymore. That makes me sad, because I think that's a great way to go feel the culture. So you're always invited here. It's nice for me to have an email or a call ahead of time. Hey, can I come visit a couple classes, you're always welcome to come sit in class. Stop and just chat with kids. They'll be very honest. I was going to ask them, but we kind of noticed at the time, hey, what would you like to see Caldwell do better, do differently? You know, we're still growing in a lot of areas, obviously, but they'll be very honest with you. I didn't talk a lot about transcripts, things like that. You know, Grimsley probably offers 15 AP classes. We offer 5. You know, how does that work? Is my kid at a disadvantage because they're at a school with fewer options than a big high school? That can definitely be a perception. Truthfully, I think the opposite is true. I actually think because we offer fewer options, I actually think that's a really good thing, and I can talk to you why about that. Colleges evaluate kids against the school they're coming from. They just do. They have to. You know, there's online educations, early colleges, homeschools, private schools. There are so many different things now. And so colleges work hard trying to figure out what kind of learner is this student. They know grades are inflated. I know grades are inflated, but I'm not very smart. And if I know that, I mean, there's some truth to that. When I look at a transcript from a certain high school, I know grades tell me almost nothing. They do. They tell me almost nothing. An A in a certain school, in a certain class, tells me very, very little. I've got to look at that student. I've got to know some things. And so colleges are doing that more and more and more and more. I just don't report my AP Calc scores anymore. I report my class average. And so if a kid has an A in my AP Calc class and makes a 2 on the AP exam, which is not a very good score, or 1, what does that tell that college about my class? It's probably a weak class. That A doesn't probably mean a whole lot. If a kid makes a B in my class and makes a 3 on the AP exam, they say, hey, that's probably a pretty rigorous class. That class means something. So Julie Gasmarian, our college admissions rep, we're reporting lots and lots and lots of data now that we were not reporting 5 years ago. Class averages, things like that, we report now. If your child has a 92 in Ms. Lieben's history, is that a good grade? Suppose the class average is a 94. Suppose class average is an 81. That 92 takes on a whole different meaning. So things like that. And so please know that schools, universities, are looking closely at high schools. They really are. They have to. Because they don't want to admit students that can't make it. That affects their retention rate. That affects their ranking in that student magazine that comes out. That affects their dollars. And so, you know, people like to ask, what schools are your kids going to? That's a good question. There's a much better question. The better question is, how are your kids doing when they get there? And so as you think about high schools, as you talk to people, those are great questions to ask. I know you got to go, I do too. I'm happy to talk more.